Can you believe it's nearly part of the season again? I don't know about you, but we've certainly had more partners getting in touch earlier on, which kind of feels like a bit more intentional. But what's the vibe your side?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely felt, I think this year partners are more excited. Like they just need to know the categories. Is there going to be a category for Frontier Partner? What do we need to do to get ahead? I think, yeah, intentional is definitely the kind of right word. I think that it's a really positive thing. Like we want to see partners getting organized sooner rather than later. I'm sure you feel the same. So you're
Yeah,
writing the
yeah.
entries for them. But yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than a partner who comes to you at the 11th hour and says,
Yeah.
"Hey, no, we've had a go. We can't do our own submission. Can you help us?" And it's like, "Yeah, we can, but also, like, we need to move now. We need to move
Yeah.
10 days ago." But I mean, being in this position, I think it's quite fun to kind of work under pressure and whatnot. Do you think the frontier angle is gonna kind of change who may be eligible? Obviously, it's a new badge. How's that going to affect people? Do you think?
Yeah, I do. I think the thing with the Frontier award categories, I mean, I'm sure there'll be one. We don't have the categories yet, but um, there's so few partners that qualify, and I think the partners would echo that. It's quite difficult to do. So for those ones that have got there and they've got the badge, they should be entering Partner of the Year. Please, they should be entering Partner of the Year. But there are quite a few partners that we're working with that are really close. They may be one specialization away. I would just, there's still time. Like there's still time to get that locked down. But yeah, I think the Frontier one in particular is going to be difficult to qualify for. And really prestigious. Can be a really cool one.
Do you think maybe Microsoft will give people a bit of a grace period for this year because obviously it's a new badge, people are still working towards it, and do you think they'll maybe classify? And we don't know this. I'm just thinking, kind of shooting from the hip and speaking out loud here. But if partners are on that journey, maybe they'll still kind of see them in the similar or same light as those who've already got it. I don't know. Do you have a thought on that?
No, I think Microsoft will be as strict as ever with that. They have to have the badge. Um, from the Microsoft perspective, we can kind of dial down, double click. From the Microsoft perspective, all that they can see is your credentials in Partner Center, so what you've earned. I don't think there'll be any kind of grace or lenience towards partners who are really close to it. I think they're going to insist that you have got that Frontier Partner badge.
Okay, interesting. I mean, well, we're going to know very shortly. The criteria is going to be released over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, you've done part of the year for quite a number of years now inside Microsoft. You've been working with partners since setting up the business as well. Kind of, what are the things you think partners do wrong?
Such a good question. What they typically do wrong, or the kind of main thing they do wrong, if you like, maybe wrong is too harsh, but what they do wrong is that they have an excellent story. So a lot of partners have got a really incredible story, whether it's customer transformation, transformation in their own business, things that they're doing in the community, whatever that looks like. But the data that's in Partner Center, the admin, the ops, the boring bit, if you like, does not back up the story. So um, just to give you an example, we had a partner, we did a big data discovery kind of project with them for last year around Azure. And they were talking about customer transformation in the Azure space and all the things that they'd been doing. But they'd forgotten or failed to link that customer to them in Partner Center, which is like a manual linkage. So Microsoft actually couldn't see any of it. And that is one of those just must be so frustrating to the partner
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they've done the work. They, in some cases, have, closed it out, got paid on it, done something incredible, and have just not taken that due diligence, that final step to link the customer in Partner Center. So Microsoft goes to validate all of this stuff, and the data just is not there. Yeah, I can't emphasize enough. The story is half of it, but actually the data and the ops behind that from a Microsoft perspective is key, is crucial.
Yeah, but do you think partners realise that though? Do you think they know how important the data piece is? Obviously, I think it's something as that example you've given there, something as simple as a small oversight, but actually can have a real serious repercussion when it comes to submitting and when it comes to aligning. And as you said there, the story with the data. But do you actually think partners understand how important that piece is?
I don't in a lot of cases. I think if you go back 10 years ago when I was at Microsoft, there was a lot of people involved in the process of Partner of the Year awards and categories and criteria, and it was a lot more about your relationship and your brand with those people at Microsoft, whereas that's just not the reality today. And I think Microsoft has become so data driven that when they're screening applications, what they're doing is looking in their internal systems at how many co-sell referrals you put in the past year, how many MCI funded engagement claims you've made. They're looking at whether you're Azure Expert MSP. It's almost like box checking. And I think a lot of partners maybe still rely on the kind of who they know, especially if they've won it in the past, and maybe get frustrated that now they almost don't even get, a foot across the line, because they just haven't totally appreciated the value and the importance of sorry to keep banging on about data, but that data and partner center has never been more important.
Do you think they forget that Microsoft can actually access partner central? Because we've certainly worked with partners in the past where we've put some really good, big, bold statements down on paper. Obviously, we haven't necessarily had the access to partner central. We've relied on the partners to validate the data themselves. But I think they realise that actually, if we make a really bold statement down in words, that actually then someone can go and see whether it's true or not.
Maybe they don't appreciate that. Maybe they don't. And don't get me wrong, Microsoft are seeing, their systems do pull together, but it's quite a manual process on their side to go in and validate all of this stuff. But I think, no, in a lot of cases, the partner probably doesn't appreciate that Microsoft are doing that due diligence in the background. I think that's fair.
Yeah. And I mean, unlike any other awards process, you do rely on the information shared, don't you? But Microsoft obviously then has an extra layer of intelligence into the actual submission where they can say, that's right, that's wrong, that's a fabrication of the truth. And maybe partners don't realise that, and they don't maybe do that due diligence enough to make sure that both things align.
Yeah, it's really important. Question for you actually is, when we're thinking about Partner of the Year as a project, which we should, rather than just this, let's do the submission and enter it.
Yeah.
When is the best time, do you think, for a partner to kind of start working on that whole project?
I mean, from my perspective, I think the earlier you can do it, the better. What you don't want to do is wrap up what you think is a great 12 months, then write an entry based on what's happened. I think, and I harp on about this all the time, and kind of certainly my team are probably bored of it, and people kind of on social are bored of it as well. But this process is happening. Part of the year isn't a new thing. It's not something that just appeared and you're like, oh, what do I do? How do I scramble around? What information have we got? Partners have also got access to co-op funds, and if they think strategically and think about what they could use those funds for, you can craft the full entry, or at least the outline of it, 12 months in advance. So you think, okay, well, this is where we've been over the last couple of years. Where do we think we can get to in the next 12 months? How do we align all of the key things that are going to be in an award entry if we want to go for kind of territory partner of the year? How do we align the things that we know are going to be important in that process, and how do we then do the end customer campaigns that tie into the Azure message or the Copilot or Frontier in the future? How do we start bringing in some of that stuff? So actually, when we're writing the submission, we can write all those examples down rather than think in hindsight, do you know what? I wish I had that evidence. I wish we could have talked about this. I wish we would have done this campaign. Yeah. If you are on the front foot, which you can be, it's just about kind of aligning your efforts, aligning your marketing, and aligning the sales goals and the sales focus to kind of the story you want to tell. So in a kind of a long-winded way, the sooner you can start it, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because then it helps someone like me or our team when we're going in and writing it. We've got so much to play with, rather than having to kind of put a circle into a square hole and having to stretch the truth potentially and make something that kind of could have been better sound good when actually it could have been better from the offset.
Yeah, I totally agree. From our perspective as well, our role in that kind of process is helping to gather the data and contextualize it, and make sure that it's echoing what that submission that your team would be writing. Make sure that it all marries up. So yeah, I feel completely the same. Yeah. Doing that 12 months running up and seeing, actually, we can see in financial services sector where, we've doubled down with, I don't know, modern work this year, and being able to see that build as you go it just helps to craft the whole story. I totally agree.
Yeah, it does. I mean, data is so important in everything we do. We harp on about it from a marketing perspective. We make decisions based on what the data tells us. Part of the year is no different, really. If you've got access to that data, which every partner has or has the potential to, they just need to make sure that partner centre is up to date. They can then craft the entry based on that, rather than craft an entry and then go and find the proof in partner centre and think, actually, that's not as strong as we thought it was, then we're starting to dial down an entry. Actually, if we use data first to inform the story, we can then match a case to say, here's all the marketing campaigns we did, here's the reach we've had, here's the growth we've had in this area, and all the lines. It just tells a really coherent story.
Yeah.
It writes itself, really,
Yeah.
which is what partners should really be aiming for.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Anyone can write a Partner of the Year award submission, I guess. So, and many partners do this year on year on year, and get really good results. What do you think a really good entry looks like?
Yeah, I think anybody can write an entry, and I think everybody should have a go. Whether you have the best story to tell, I think from a profile piece, there are behind the scenes benefits of making a submission and entering. I think from my perspective, you can't just rely on this year. You need to go back the previous year, the year before, because we might have had a great year this year, but actually compared to last year was awful in a specific area. So it doesn't just say, we've grown X percent or we sold this many licenses. It says compared to last year, like the growth has been exponential, and actually that's part of the story. If we just focus on, we did 100 licenses or 1,000 licenses or 1,000,000 licenses, actually if we did none last year, 0 to 1,000,000 is so much greater than somebody going into kind of a database somewhere and saying, okay, yeah, you did 1,000,000 this year, but you did 999,999 last year. So actually, all you've done is sell one extra license. That isn't really compelling. But if you've gone from 0 to hero, sorry to kind of throw that phrase around, but like that just tells so much of a story and about how you've grown and how much more committed you are to Microsoft. I think one of the other things I always get people to kind of really focus on is look at all the great stuff you've done. So marketing, sales, growth, specializations, skills, how you focus on people. Obviously align that, and that's all really important. But I think what a lot of the time people forget is Microsoft love to know when they're winning against compete solutions. So when you've unseated NetSuite, or when you've unseated AWS or Google, like make sure you put that in, because they're the things where that Microsoft wins market share. It's all good and well taking a license opportunity from another Microsoft partner. Great, but Microsoft doesn't really benefit in that instance. They just pass on licenses from one partner.
Share shift.
Yeah, 100%. But if you're winning big deals against competing solutions, that's an incredible story about how you're championing the Microsoft message, how you're helping these businesses become frontier firms with Microsoft at play. So I think there's a couple of key things, but they'd be a couple of the ones that I'd always kind of get partners to hammer home. Focus on more than just the last 12 months, and don't forget to mention some of those big deals that you've won where you've unseated a different vendor solution.
Yeah, incredible. So should we talk about timelines? I know nothing is kind of firmed up yet, really, but when might categories be published? When might the submission period open?
Yeah, so we know because it was announced last week or a little bit earlier than that entries will open on the 1st of June. They were closed on the 7th of July, which is slightly brought forward based on last year. I think we started and ended on the 17th of the month. So we've got an extra week to submit this year, but actually we're expecting that the categories and the criteria will be released mid-May rather, which is a similar timescale to last time. So actually the window to write an entry once we've got the criteria is technically 10 days shorter. So I think people should be looking out for kind of that announcement mid-May to understand, okay, well, what are the exact criteria? Are there any new awards that have popped up that we think we might be relevant and might be good to go for? And then start looking at kind of getting those data points, getting into Partner Center, speaking to somebody like you guys if they haven't got internal resource to just help do that validation and due diligence up front, and just save a lot of the stress, heartbreak when you don't get shortlisted, and kind of just do some of that validation up front. I think is going to be important for that kind of midnight 7th of July close that everyone loves and everyone loathes. But I think what we're hoping to find out over the next couple of weeks is the character count going to be the same as last time? Is it going to be 8,000 characters? Kind of what does that look like, and what are the specific criteria? Because that will ultimately help a partner decide if a category is right for them or not.